God of War Ragnarok is easily one of the most anticipated games of this year, and for good reason, since God of War 2018 set the bar very high for the sequel. The story, the gameplay, and characters are all outstanding. It really is as close as a game can get to being a master of all trades. One of the main reasons hype for Ragnarok is so high is because of all the unanswered questions there are from the last God of War game and the Greek era of the series. So here is every question that I could think of that God of War Ragnarok needs to answer. Starting off with loose threads from the older games, how did Kratos survive the ending of God of War 3? Impaling himself with the Blade of Olympus and seemingly committing suicide, it seems like there should be some kind of explanation as to how he didn't die. Of course the answer could be as boring and simple as, he's a god, allowing him to survive his injuries, but this action of Kratos killing himself was so significant for his character that I doubt the explanation would be that lazy. How did Kratos travel to the Norse lands? The answer to this question is most likely linked to the answer of question 1, but it is interesting to think about whether Kratos ended up in Scandinavia by chance, or if it was predetermined by someone or something, like Fae, who can see the future. There is also the question of whether or not the Greek and Norse pantheon share the same planet. If so, it needs to be explained why the events of the ending of God of War 3 didn't affect Midgard like it did Olympus. What happened to the Leviathan axe when the World Serpent ate it? It may be easy to forget or overlook, but when Kratos and Atreus meet Jormungandr for the first time, the Leviathan axe ends up in the serpent's mouth, and when the axe is returned to our protagonists, a message pops up saying that the axe is now ether imbued. Ether is a very venomous substance that the world serpent can produce. It is also the same poison that is destined to kill Thor come Ragnarok. With this in mind, it would seem possible that Kratos' fight against Thor may be much quicker and easier than we would assume, but that of course remains to be seen. Who called the world serpent? This is one of the most popular topics to discuss in regards to 2018's God of War. After Atreus becomes ill and Kratos is bringing him to see if Freya can heal him, we hear the same loud, thunderous horn that our protagonists used to call Jormungandr echo through the cave that they're in. This has led to many debates over who this could be, including Modi, Heimdall, and even characters from the future. I don't really think there's enough evidence here to make any credible guesses, but this is very clearly set up to be answered in the future. Why didn't Magni come back to life? Right before Kratos and Atreus can obtain a piece of Thamor's chisel, they meet Magni and Modi and a fight breaks out. Kratos kills Magni and Modi escapes. Atreus points out how Magni doesn't come back to life, and Mimir is also puzzled by this, and only says that it could be significant. We aren't given much to go off of, as the conversation is brief, but it could be important to remember for the next game. The same could also be said for Modi, as he is killed by Atreus, although it isn't made explicitly clear that he actually died. How does Freya know Kratos' name? In the final battle against Baldur, we hear Freya shout Kratos' name in order to get him to stop fighting, begging the question, how did she learn his name? When they first meet, Freya immediately knows Kratos is a god, but she doesn't imply that she knows his name or his reputation, or even what pantheon he's from. So at what point did she find this out, and how? It's particularly interesting since Kratos' name is said so rarely throughout the game. The only other main character to say his name is Mimir in some battles, but this is slightly more understandable since we see Mimir finding out that Kratos is the ghost of Sparta and the son of Zeus, and it's very reasonable to believe that he would know his name, seeing as how he also knew what he did to the Greek pantheon. What happened to Baldur's corpse? In the final battle against Baldur, it ends with him trying to kill his mother Freya. Kratos stops him by snapping his neck. Freya, now hating Kratos for killing her son, vows revenge and walks away with Baldur's corpse in her hands. We know Freya has the ability to reanimate corpses, as she did with Mimir's head. Assuming she did this to Baldur as well, it raises the questions of what Baldur would do with his new life, for lack of a better word. Would he side with his mother? Unlikely, since last we saw he was fully willing to kill her. Would he seek revenge on Kratos, or simply run off on some journey of self-discovery? We learned that Mimir cannot drown in Tyr's temple, so if Baldur was reanimated as well, it would be safe to assume he couldn't either. Which could mean his state of living is similar to that of before Freya's spell was broken by the mistletoe, driving him further insane. Of course, there is the possibility that he cannot be brought back, as his body is fully intact, unlike Mimir's case, where only his head was brought back to life. Finally, there is the possibility that Freya chooses to let her son stay dead, as he did say he'd rather die than continue living while unable to feel. What did Brock and Sindri do to Mimir? When Kratos and Atreus are about to leave for Jotunheim to spread Frey's ashes, Mimir stays behind with Brock and Sindri so that he doesn't ruin the private moment between Kratos and Atreus. When the pair return from Jotunheim, they find Mimir left on the floor, and he says that Brock and Sindri took an uncomfortable amount of measurements before leaving him. What were the measurements for? I think one of the most obvious answers is that they can build a body for Mimir, so he can somewhat return to a normal life. I don't really know what else they could be setting up here, if anything at all. What is the truth about the Jotunheim mural? While the father-son duo are in Jotunheim, Kratos sees a mural that seemingly depicts his death in Atreus' arms. At least, that seems to be how Kratos himself interprets the supposed vision of the future. But whether this is actually his death, or a different person entirely, isn't made explicitly clear. Seeing as how there are no blades of chaos or Leviathan axe in the mural, there isn't much indicating that this is Kratos, other than Atreus' sadness to his death. Now that we know Tyr will be a part of the next game, it is possible that it's him who will die in Atreus' arms, and personally, this is the theory that I would put my money on. How are all the giants dead? At the end of the game, we see Jotunheim, and while there, we see dozens of dead giants scattered all over the realm. The question that never gets asked by Kratos or Atreus is, how could this have happened? Or possibly more importantly, who could have done this? My first guess was Thor, as it fits his character the most. But to the contrary, the Aesir's main goal is to find a way into Jotunheim to prevent Ragnarok from happening. So it couldn't be Thor or any Aesir, since that would mean they have found a way into the realm. Again, we simply don't know enough information to make an accurate guess as to what happened here, as it could involve time travel or some other plot device that we can't really predict. Those are all of the major questions that I could think of that are set up to be answered in God of War Ragnarok. There are certainly more that I haven't included, as so much was set up in God of War 2018, but these are some of the most significant plot threads in my opinion. Was there any I missed, or are there answers to some of the questions that I just didn't pick up on? If there's anything you'd like to add, feel free to put in the comments, but either way, thank you very much for watching, and bye.